here for the sixth episode of Epic. Friends, as our topic suggests, that is life is as you make it. In today's world, everyone has become so busy that they don't even get time to take proper rest. As a result, they become mentally stressed. Sometimes by overthinking, one may get a headache or anxiety. In Hindi, there's proverb called "Khali dimag shaitan ka ghar." I think everyone knows this very well, which means empty head makes you think improperly, which is very wrong. So basically, our mental health should be properly maintained by us in any situation. You are not the bad feelings you get in your head. You are not the storm you walk through. You are the person experiencing the storm. The storm may knock you off your feet, but you will stand once again. Either the weather will change or you will find shelter. Hold on. Now, let's understand what mental health is, the importance of mental health, and learn something new in today's episode. It's my immense pleasure to welcome today's guests, our today's guest of honor, Protractor Aishwarya Khade ma'am, and today's speaker, Rotarian Prerna Joshi ma'am, and Sneha Subedar ma'am. And last but not least, I would like to welcome all the collaborated clubs, guests, and each and every member present in the meeting. Now, I would like to introduce today's guest of honor, Protractor Aishwarya Khade ma'am. Ma'am has completed her MA in Clinical Psychology in 2019 and BA in Psychology in 2017. She has worked as consultant psychologist in Mindtales Mental Health Pune and Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital of Research Center. Ma'am also worked as associate psychologist in Brainberg Knowledge Solutions Pune. Currently in Rotaract, she is serving as Pune District Treasurer. Ma'am is the founder, charter president of Rotaract Club of Pune, Zenith. Ma'am have been a part of this Rotaract organization for 6+ years and served as president, vice president, director club service, director community service, director professional development, district council member. Now, I would like to request Protractor Aishwarya Khade ma'am to address the audience.
A very good afternoon to all of you all. And please don't call me ma'am. I'm just as young as all of us over here. So thank you so much for inviting me today with all of us, all of these host clubs. Like there are so many of them. I think I'll just not read out the names. So I'm really honored to be here. Welcome, Prerna ma'am, to Rotract platform. And I'm really honored that I'm sharing this space with you. So, Prerna ma'am will be talking a lot about mental health and its awareness, its importance. I'm sure all of us have been knowing the importance during this pandemic, how important it is to be sane, to actually be able to cope up with our environment and even with our own self issues. So, thank you for addressing this topic. And I think let's just hear it out from ma'am about what she has to share about the mental health spectrum. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Aishwarya ma'am. Now I would like to introduce today's speaker, Rotarian Prerna Joshi ma'am. Ma'am started her career in the IT industry and has over 2 decades of work experience with large and small software companies. Ma'am worked as a client engagement manager, leading large multi-year, multi-million banking and financial projects, and have handled large teams across different client projects successfully. Ma'am got postgraduate with double masters, masters in computer management and masters in management science. Ma'am completed a full-time 1-year postgraduate certificate course in counseling psychology and presently conducts counseling sessions and REBT to individuals. Ma'am gives services which include adult, child, and family counseling and also manages corporate training sessions on mental health. We are really very fortunate people to have such a great personalities like you both. Now, time comes to know about our mental health. So, here's presenting Life is as you make it. So, I request Rotarian Prerna Joshi ma'am to address the audience.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk at the Epic. I have listened to a few of the sessions that had happened of Epic, and I think this is a great platform for all to understand, various industries, various people talk about their experiences, and it's a really good platform. Like my introduction was given. I have been interacting with a variety of people while I was working. People like you talk to clients, peers, management, juniors, freshers, everybody. And what I was always intrigued by was the way people behave and the way people think. And I always wondered why they behaved or thought the way they did. Now this kind of put me to look at studying human behavioral aspects, and I did the counseling psychology course. Now I have a presentation for you guys today. I'm going to walk you through what mental health is all about, what are the different aspects that we need to look at, giving you examples wherever required, and then we will take over the question and answers if anybody has. So let me start by presenting. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So the topic of mental health and well-being is very sensitive and considered a taboo even in the most educated set of people. Now, when we think of the word mental, right, we quickly and so easily associate it with a madman who is roaming around aimlessly with battered clothes and unhygienic look, right? So even to discuss about a topic which has the word mental is something no one is willing to do. So I would like to start with presenting a few Indian statistics on mental health to give you an idea as to how many people are affected with mental troubles. And if you look at it, the number is pretty big. So over 90 million Indians, or about 7.5% of the country's population of 1.3 billion, suffer from some form of mental disorder. This is according to the World Health Organization, and this was predicted to reach up to 20% by end of 2020. Now, 56 million Indians suffer from depression, and another 38 million Indians suffer from anxiety disorders. Suicide is the second highest cause of death in India for the age group 15 to 34, which is nearly about 35% of the total population, right? So mental health troubles are seen across various age groups, and they are not restricted to any specific age group. No one is immune to mental troubles, and we need to be able to look at it in a more positive way. Now, the need of the hour is to understand the importance of mental health, as it is, I feel, an essential component to one's overall health and well being, and that mental illness is common and definitely treatable. Now, we also need to understand that mental illness is no different than physical illness, and it needs to be treated that way. So, in case you have a flu, right, you do go to your family physician. Now, similarly, if you don't feel mentally healthy, it is perfectly fine to go and see a counselor or a mental health professional, right? So when we talk about mental health, we are essentially looking at how we feel, think, act, and relate to others, right? Now, brain becomes the important organ in human body as it controls and coordinates actions and reactions. It allows us to think and feel, and enables us to have memories and feelings. So basically, all the things that makes us human. Right? So let's talk about mental health and its aspect and learn more. Now, if you think about it, we sustain psychological injuries even more often than we do physical ones. Now, injuries like failure, rejection, loneliness, right? And they can also get worse if we ignore them, and they can impact our lives in a dramatic way. And yet, even though there are scientifically proven techniques we could use to treat these kind of psychological injuries, we don't even think about them. It just doesn't occur to us that we should ask for help. Um, we do hear this often. Oh, you're feeling depressed? Just shake it off. It's all in your head, right? But you won't ever hear that being said to someone maybe with a broken leg. Oh, just walk it off. It's all in your leg, right? So think about it. So, what exactly is mental health? Now, the World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of well being in which each and every individual realizes his or her own potential to cope with normal stresses of life, work productively and fruitfully, and contribute to his or her own community. Now, the mental health is dependent on three aspects, mainly the cognitive, which is your thinking, behavior, and emotional well being. Now, when a person can manage all these three aspects successfully, we can consider that person to be mentally healthy. Another important thing to note is that being mentally healthy does not really mean complete absence of mental troubles, nor does it mean that that person has no problems or challenges or adversities in life. What it means is that the person is able to manage the challenges, problems, and adversities well, and not letting it hamper him or her in any significant way. So it is also said that a mentally healthy person is the one who experiences healthy negative emotions. Now we'll discuss emotions in a little detail next as they form an important aspect of human mind. Right? So when we talk about emotions in psychology, it means a complex state of feeling that results in physical and psychological changes that influence your thought and behavior. So when we talk about emotions, they are basically divided, as you all know, as positive emotions and negative emotions. Now, positive emotions will include, happiness, joy, hope, love, faith. Um, if we take a scale of 1 to 10 to measure our emotions, in a case of a positive emotion, anywhere on the scale is still good, right? All you might say is that, oh, I'm a little happy, or I'm extremely happy, or I'm euphoric, I'm overjoyed, right? It still means that the emotion has a positive effect on you, physically as well as psychologically. So let's concentrate more on the negative emotions. Now, there are 6 main emotions that we can talk about. Now, there are a lot of variations and different words that are being used to express those emotions, but generally, these are the 6 main ones that we can talk about, namely anger, anxiety, depression, guilt, hurt, and shame. Now, all these negative emotions, when we try to measure on a similar scale of 1 to 10, right, the effect that they have on you physically and psychologically is going to differ. Now, the higher we go on the scale, they will become more bothersome for you. For example, when one is angry in a certain situation, it would mean he is angry at a lower level of scale or furious or raging at a higher level of scale. Now, the lower level scale and the higher level scale of this negative emotion will definitely not have the same effect on you physically as well as psychologically. The difference will be significant, and we can see how in just a bit. Right? So, there are 2 types of negative emotions that we need to understand. The first one is known as healthy negative emotions, and the second one is called as the unhealthy negative emotions. Now, what do you mean by healthy negative emotions? On the scale, when we look at it, the emotion that falls on between the scale of 1 to 4 would be called as a healthy negative emotions. Now, this emotion is important from our perspective. It is good to have healthy negative emotions as they help us motivate to do better and work harder. Now, they alert us that something is not right, maybe motivate us to engage in self enhancing behavior, encourage us to reach our goals, and lead to balanced and realistic thinking patterns. As against that, when you look at unhealthy negative emotions, they would fall somewhere between 7 and 10 on the scale, on the higher side. And unhealthy because it causes a lot of disturbance in everyday living, right? It leads to constant negative thoughts and actions. The physical and the psychological impact is much higher. They can lead to psychic pain and discomfort. They can push us to self defeating behavior and prevent us to reach our set goals. It can also lead to skewed or maybe distorted thinking patterns. So if you take an example, if you fail in an exam, right, the natural reaction you have is to get angry. With getting angry at yourself at a healthy level, right, you can push yourself to do better in the future and look at the lessons learned, set goals to achieve your target. And it is basically the anger that is helping you push yourself to definitely do better, right? In the same situation, when the anger gets into an unhealthy level, right, it would trigger a lot of negative behavior and maybe negative thinking, right? So negative behavior can be withdrawal from the world, blaming self and others for what has happened, taking out your anger on somebody else. Or negative thoughts can be, I would never be able to show my face to anybody. I'll never succeed in life. I am a complete failure. Or as far as you go, I don't deserve to live, right? So when at an unhealthy level, these negative behaviors and negative thinking patterns are definitely going to be a lot more. So if you see, healthy negative emotions will push you to self-enhancing behaviors, and unhealthy negative emotions are definitely going to push you to self-defeating behavior. Now you need to emotionally stay in the healthy negative emotions and be able to look past the event that triggered the emotion and move further to achieve your goal. One thing we all need to understand is that it is the most of the events that have already happened or are happening or will happen are not necessarily in our control. We can do little to control or change what is happening. But what we can definitely control is what happens next, and think of positive ways to move forward. Just because one thing goes wrong doesn't mean that it's end of the world. So now we now understand that having healthy negative emotions are beneficial, and they're even required for us to be a fully functioning individual. But in certain times, we start losing our grip on maintaining that healthy level, and we start moving towards unhealthy level. Now, how do you identify if you are treading towards the dangerous levels of negative emotion or you are still at a healthy level? So let's consider the following four aspects that help us understand where we stand. The first aspect is affecting and disturbing. Now, how much is the emotion affecting or disturbing you? Right? Does it disturb your routine, your relationships, your daily functioning, and to what level? Now, higher the level of disturbance, higher you will be on the negative emotional scale, moving towards unhealthy level. The next one we look at is the duration and longevity. How long do you stay in that emotion? Or how much is the lifespan of that emotion, right? Is it short lived? Do you stay in that mood or feeling for like days or weeks together? Do these emotions get triggered very often, right? So this is the aspect that we need to look at. Next comes intensity, where we're looking at what is the strength or the force of that emotion. Is there a sudden burst of emotion, or do you have like heightened or intense feelings? Does the emotion cause any temporary disability, right? That is how you would know the intensity of that emotion. And the last one is the physiological impact. Now, how does that emotion affect you physically? Does it cause you headache, giddiness? Does it provoke you to do physical harm, which can be, hitting yourself or somebody vulnerable, or cutting yourself, right? Do you lose your appetite? Do you feel extremely sleepy or end up being sleepless? So these are all the physiological impact that can help us understand. Now, also, these factors need to be looked at to determine if we are moving towards unhealthy level for an intense emotion you might feel in a particular situation, right? Now, let's take a situation, right? I have studied really hard all through the year, and I was expecting to come first in the exam, as has always been so far. But unfortunately, I did not. Now, what are the emotions that I would feel? Maybe anger, frustration, shame, right? So, what do I do now? I will look at each of the four aspects to note what I feel at that point in time or even afterwards, right? I analyze to understand where on the scale is my emotion and take necessary action if needed to be at the healthy level. Now, let's say here's my analysis of these four factors, right? Affecting and disturbing, yes, it is affecting my daily functioning. I've stopped all the activities that were enjoyable before. I even stopped meeting my friends, right? The duration and longevity, every time somebody mentions exams, marks, or anything closely related to those things, I start getting angry and I stay in that emotions for a few days after that, right? Intensity is maybe a no out of nowhere. I've seen episodes of sudden burst of anger, right? Including yelling at others around, talking rudely, clenching my fists in frustration, right? This is what is happening. And the physiological impact, I don't feel like eating anything. I am just oversleeping. I don't want to get out and stay locked in my room for a long time. So, with all these things, I can definitely conclude that I am at an unhealthy level of negative emotions that I felt because of an outcome of an event which was out of my control, right? And I need to understand that if I don't do something to get to a healthy level, I'm eventually going to get into depression by all these things. So, as we go further, we will look at what we can do to so that we stay at a healthy level, right? So these are the four things that definitely you all need to keep in mind. And if you feel anytime that you are not really just having an emotion but it is a little exaggerated one, try to put yourself in these four and try to understand where you stand. So, having looked at how emotions play an important role in determining the impact it has on us, right? Let's try and understand what mental health means. So, when we talk about mental health, the spectrum is very big, right? On one end of the spectrum is mental health, and the other end is mental illness or mental disorder. Now, a mentally healthy person is identified as someone who is thriving, content, and fully functional overall. Whereas, if a mentally ill person is someone who is having, say, for example, chronic depression or an anxiety disorder. Now, mental illness or disorder might require intervention from psychiatrists and probable medications and other means of treatment. Now, these conditions cannot be handled by a counselor or psychotherapist, but they definitely can play a supportive role. So, when we look at mental health continuum, each of us lie in between these two ends, right? If we understand to identify early on as to where we are on this continuum, the troubles can be managed effectively and with counseling and therapy. Now, the four areas on the continuum as we see normal functioning, that means that the person is fully functional and mentally healthy. A common and reversible distress means the person will be dealing with daily ups and downs in life and able to manage the distress effectively either by himself or with some help. Right? Now, the significant functional impairment means that the person is not able to carry out certain functions in daily life and is basically withdrawn from everything. When we come to the end of the spectrum, we are looking at clinical disorder, which means severe and persistent functional impairment, significant distress of personal functioning. We also need to understand that we are never fixed on one spot on this continuum. Now, how we deal with everyday problems, adversities, and issues that will make us go up and down the line. So, essentially, if you look at it, it's all in our hands to keep ourselves balanced at all time. Now, one more aspect we need to keep in mind is that we cannot really understand mental health of a person by just looking at him or her. Right? It's not like a bruise that you can see. Right? Since it happens beyond what your eyes can see, it can become tricky to know, understand, and empathize with the suffering person. So let's look at some pointers, right, for us to understand the way to identify a mentally healthy or a mentally troubled person. Right? When we look at mentally healthy person, he is someone who understands one's ability, manages stress effectively, has good work productivity, feels good about oneself, manages and expresses emotions effectively, shows empathy, has the ability to deal with failures and disappointments, is resilient and able to cope up, is able to build and maintain good relationships. Now, when we look at mentally troubled person, right, what we can see is he or she will be emotionally distant, might show decrease in productivity, feels no enthusiasm or is constantly fatigued. They have some kind of unknown fears. They try to pretend to be okay or happy. They avoid people and social interactions. They feel burdened by doing the routine work. They might show indulgent behavior. It can be binge eating, substance abuse. That kind of behavior can be seen, and they generally lack in all areas of life. Now, to just give you an example, right? A friend of mine who was an extrovert, and life of a party, very efficient in work, and had good relations with everyone around him. Now, when I notice that this friend now looks withdrawn from everything, right? He's rejecting offers to socialize, kept forgetting to keep his appointments, looked lost in thoughts and looked a lot aloof, an alarm bell should ring. Right? If a person's behavior changes drastically and then there are no obvious reasons known, it's time to talk to that friend to find out more and get help if needed. Right? Now, the stigma of talking about mental pressures and stress that he or she might have, might lead to further damaging consequences to his or her well-being. So it is upon each one of us to keep a watch. Now, having understood mental health, let's look at the reasons why mental health gets affected. Now, we'll start with major life events. Now, these events are not in our control. For example, you have financial losses, death of a loved one, loss of a job, physical disease, relationship breakup, marriage, rape, natural disasters. So there are so many of these life events which are not in our control, but definitely can be reasons to affect our mental health. The next one is the daily hassles. Now, these events are not self-created, but maybe a lot of times by people who are within our lives, right? These events happen almost every day. And there are cases where you don't want to be in those situations, but you must be. For example, like in office, right? I need to go to office to work to earn money, but it's a toxic environment and it is something that I have to face almost every day. But one thing we can do definitely in these cases is we are able to control, to make changes to that situation. So the events are not self created, but we have the control to make the changes that might be needed for that situation. So your examples can be toxic home environment, can be toxic workplace, or toxic relationships as well. The next one we look at is our personality factors. Personality traits or elements are the ones which can create vulnerability. Now, these vulnerabilities are something that can cause a lot of stress for us and can affect our mental health. Now, examples can be, a person having a lack of decision making ability, or is passive or negative approach to everything. Crowd mentality, having a narcissist personality, a rigid attitude, lack of assertiveness, not being able to say no, or having a lot of tentativeness in everything that you do. Unhealthy comparison, lack of critical thinking or forming judgments, and unrealistic expectations. Now, these are all things that we as people, if we are having, those can definitely attribute towards having an effect on your mental health. The last and not the least is the biological factors, which again are not in our control, right? They're genetically passed on, or they can also be caused by chemical imbalance in the brain. And the reasons for that can be numerous. It can be a disease, injuries, aging, chronic stress, or poor nutrition. Or it can also be caused by one's upbringing. Now, I would like to take you through the most common mental troubles that we might face on regular basis, what events and situations can cause them, and what effect do those have on us. So we'll start first with stress. Now, stress is a feeling of emotional strain and pressure, right? What are the probable events or situations that can cause stress? Staying away from home, or living with strangers, conflicts with roommates or your assignment partners or professors for that matter, larger workload and academic demands, concerns about the future, exams, assignments, getting a good job. Finances, managing finances is another reason why people can have stress. Lack of support, social pressures, and existing relationships, new relationships, or even for that matter, no relationships are also a common reason for having stress. Now, what can be the effects of stress on you, right? The physical symptoms of stress can include, having skin issues, hypertension, chronic back pain or neck pain, your stomach related problems, the digestion problems, sleep issues. All these can be the physical symptoms of stress. We're also looking at emotional stress, which can create havoc. One might feel helpless to control the feelings and things, just begin to spiral. It can manifest into, stress can lead to anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, weight gain, getting into substance abuse, sadness, headaches. All these can be caused by stress. We're also looking at cognitive issues, feeling irritable, having trouble remembering or focusing on things, feeling frustrated or restless all the time, being easily confused, or having an internal dialogue for negative reinforcements about themselves can be the issues that we look at. Some of the most common behavioral symptoms also include, being absent or withdrawn, showing up late to class or to meetings, being exhausted all the time, eating unhealthy, engaging in risky behavior, or getting into accidents frequently, showing mood swings, or even contemplating suicide. So the effects that you see of stress are quite a lot, and that is what we need to worry about. The next one we look at is anxiety. Now, anxiety is a feeling of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes. Anxiety is something when you care too much about everything. So, what are the events that we can look at which causes anxiety? Now, interacting with authority figures can give, butterflies in your stomach and can cause anxiety. Speaking out, thoughts of being judged, or thoughts of, public humiliation, nervousness, or separation from support system of family and friends. Basically, staying away from your parents and your family can cause a lot of anxiety. Not being able to perform at expected standards, in schools, colleges, at all levels in life. Lack of sleep, like pulling all nighters during exams and assignments, going on a date, or even committing to a relationship can be a cause of anxiety. Also, thinking about things that are out of your control can cause a lot of anxiety, and a lot of negative what if thinkings. What if this happens? What if that happens? Are the thoughts that create a lot of anxiety. Now, the effects of anxiety can be irritability at all times. You are having racing thoughts or unwanted thoughts. There are panic attacks that are seen where people have, anxiety attacks, as you can call it. You have difficulty sleeping, or might have also suicidal thoughts. Right? So these are all the effects that anxiety can have on you. The next one we see is depression, a state of mind marked by feelings of low self worth or guilt and a reduced ability to enjoy life. Now, depression is when you really don't care about anything. So, anxiety and depression, if you look at it, anxiety is when you care too much about everything and that causes you anxiety. Depression is a state of mind where you really don't care about anything at all. Right? So, what are the different things that can cause depression? Conflicts with self or others, failure at tasks or assignments, bullying or isolation, poor eating and exercising habits, relationship breakups, traumatic events, social pressures or environmental stressors, personal weaknesses, right? Stressful life events, family history, and drugs or alcohol use. Now, the effects of depression are similar to what you would see in anxiety or even in stress. You have persistent feeling of sadness. You feel disconnected from your emotions, right? There is a lack of interest in the world around you. You have persistent, say, body aches, insomnia. You just don't feel getting out of the bed and feeling like the world would be better off without you. So, let's look at a few generic examples of unfavorable events, right? And how one reacts in that situation will affect the way he or she will think and behave. So these examples are given to you to give a perspective of how being in exactly the same situation can two people have two different perspectives and thought processes, right? It also helps us to judge which one will have significant impact on their mental state. So the first one is, I failed in an exam. Now we're looking at two people, right? Two people being in exactly the same situation. There's a person A and a person B. Now, person A, what happens to him is he gets withdrawn from the world because he has failed an exam. He starts blaming everything around him or her for this to happen. So, there is blaming that is happening of others. He experiences loss of self confidence and he stops doing everything that he used to like to do. So, the impact that person A has of the event, I failed in an exam, is completely negative. Now, when we look at person B also failed the exam. Now, what person B does, he takes a break from his routine to examine what went wrong, right? Talks to his professors maybe to understand what can be done, plans to allocate more time to study, finds a study buddy to motivate him. So the outlook that person B has is a more positive one, even if the situation is the same. So as I said, it doesn't mean that person B is not angry with himself, right? But as we talked about, he's using that anger to motivate himself to do better going forward. Now we'll look at another example. I'm not selected to represent my team in sports. So if you're a sportsman, being in the team is what is the utmost goal for everybody. Now when I'm not selected, what would person A do? He might quit playing sports altogether. He feels worthless and humiliated and thinks of suicide. How can I not get selected? Right? He blames coach, parents, teammates for all the failures and all the things that did not go right. He keeps ruminating about the past, thinking about what should have been done, how should it have been done, and just not getting any conclusion out of it. He can get angry and aggressive as well. Now, a person be in a similar situation, with determination and grit, he trains hard to ensure that he makes to the team the next season. So he accepts the fact that he's not in the team this time, but instead of looking at all the negatives, he wants to look at positives and train a lot more harder. Now he faces the challenges with a positive attitude. Now the boy or the girl I madly love, does not love me back. Now this feeling is of rejection, and what happens is person A, he feels like he or she will never ever be loved again, right? Looks at every relationship with suspicion now, right? Blames self for all the fallouts, avoids people and overanalyzes every situation he or she gets into. Even thinks of suicide, right? Rejection, this cannot happen to me. So that is the negative thought patterns that a person can get into. As against that, we're looking at something to look for in person B, where he doesn't really start self-blaming, but he analyzes the situation a little more objectively. Tries to involve himself in activities to keep his mind occupied in a more fruitful way rather than ruminating about what has happened. Try to keep himself or herself occupied, right? And he also keeps an open mind for newer relationships. So it's just not that one person does not love me, it's end of the world. There are always many opportunities that would come along, and you need to keep an open mind for that. Now the last one, right? I have my Viva exam today, but I'm scared of presenting in front of the crowd. Now, what will happen to person A? What would be his thought process? Oh, I am going for my Viva. What will happen if I make a mistake? Everyone is going to make fun of me. Everybody's going to laugh at me. What if I am wrong? What if I forget everything I know, right? And I am definitely going to fail my Viva miserably. So when you start thinking in a negative way, all these thoughts are definitely going to come to your mind, which are not going to help you in any way for the exam that you have to face today. Right? As against that person B, he's attending the same Viva, he's also scared of presenting in front of the crowd, but having self-assuring talk, saying I know my stuff and I have prepared well. Right? It's okay even if I make a mistake. I have tried out presenting in front of mirror, my friends, my family, and I think I am ready. Right? So all these four situations that we saw, right? What is it that we see is in a given situation, anybody who looks at things positively is definitely going to gain more than staying in the same feeling, the same situation for a longer time, which does not help anybody. So you got to keep in mind that a negative mind will never give you a positive life. Now, a few areas, right, which students or young adults might be encountering on a regular basis. Now, we will see all these areas and how they affect us. I'll start with the main one, which is the social media exposure. Now, what it can cause is what I would like to call as a social media anxiety and a Facebook depression, right? So social media can be a great tool for learning and sharing, right? But it's scary the amount of time we spend living on the virtual platform instead of living real life. Now we are constantly switched on, never spending time with our own thoughts. The minute we have some time alone, the phone is out and we are scrolling through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And the next thing we know is hours have passed. Right? This is a situation with just about everybody. Now it seems to affect the pleasure center of the brain, and it triggers the release of dopamine, to promote pleasurable experiences, right? So we see a lot of good things happening, it kind of releases dopamine and it promotes a pleasurable experience. Now, over time, what happens is more and more of such activity is needed to induce the same pleasurable response, and it creates a dependency. So it's like an addiction where a little is never enough, but you're always wanting more to have the same level of a pleasurable experience. Now, what worries me more about spending so much time on these platforms are the comparisons that we begin to make. Right? Let me give you a couple of examples. Now, a blogger, who left his say 9 to 5 job and started traveling around the world, getting paid for it, having the most amazing time, while you are sitting here in your 9 to 5 job, panicking and wondering why you are not doing the same, right? Another example can be a fitness blogger who spends all the waking time in the gym looking amazing and flawless, while you are struggling to get to gym once or even twice in a week, and now you start feeling bad about yourself. The models who spend their time ensuring they look perfect may even be photoshopping their posts before they go up. And now you think why you can't look like that. But what we don't see is that what goes behind these scenes, right? There might be a lot of trouble, frustration, hard work, struggles, which never get posted anywhere, right? So what you see on social media are all the good things that people want to show, and nobody would want to say or show how frustrating it had been to reach the level that they have reached. So what you need to do is ask yourself, right? Are you the victim of constant comparison? Do you think someone else's is living a better life than yours based on social media? Do you feel jealous or upset or even anxious when you see these things? What you need to do is stop comparing. You know, Stop thinking that your life isn't great based on somebody else's. You need to evaluate what what makes you happy, and you have to strive to achieve that. Now, how do you identify if you're suited by social media, right? Stopping to check social media in the middle of a conversation, spending more time, which is more than 6 hours on social media, and also failing in attempts to cut back. Lying about the amount of time you spend on social media when asked, right? Intensive worry about what's happening online when you're not there is also called FOMO, which is fear of missing out. So if I'm not there, there might be a lot of things that I would not know about. Withdrawing from family and friends, neglecting or losing interest in school, work, your favorite activities, experiencing severe nervousness, anxiety, or withdrawal symptoms when you are not able to check social media. Also, having an overwhelming desire to share everything on social media feeds. Right? So, these are the areas that you need to watch out for. And these are the things that can lead to a lot of anxiety and depression. The next one to look for is exam pressures, which everybody is well aware of. What can exam pressures do? It can definitely cause stress and anxiety. Now, exam stress is a feeling of tension and worry that comes from test taking situations, right? It is normal to feel some stress about upcoming tests, exams, papers, or presentations, and a small amount of stress can challenge you, simulate to work harder, like how we have seen before. Now, exam stress becomes problematic when it interferes with your ability to perform and achieve your academic and learning goals. So pressures are going to be there, but they should not become problematic. Now, why do we even have exam pressures? There are a lot of reasons why different people would have exam pressures, right? One can be feeling little or no control over the exam situation, right? So there are cases where things can get postponed, things just don't go the way you want, and you feel that you have no control over what is happening. That can cause a lot of pressure. The second aspect can be negative thinking or self-criticism, and you're not really ready. You just keep thinking negative, and there's a lot of self-criticism, like I am not smart enough. Oh, I'll get a terrible grade, right? I'm sure I won't pass this exam, or oh, you know what, I can't just do this. Irrational thinking about exams and its outcome. Now, if you have irrational beliefs of I should always pass, or I should always get A, or I should always come first in the class, now the outcome is what will cause a lot of anxiety for you. And right before you're going for the exams, the pressure is always going to be there for you to perform at your best, right? That pressure can cause a lot of stress. There can also be irrational beliefs like if I don't pass, my family, my boyfriend, girlfriend, friends will lose respect for me, right? I will never get a degree or be successful in life, right? So these can be the beliefs that you have in your life, which can cause trouble. Can also be irrational demands. I will have to at least get an A, or I am worthless, right? Or having a demand that I will fail no matter what I do. What's the point in doing anything anyway? Right? So these are all the things, the thoughts that can cause a lot of anxiety and stress for you. The next one we're looking at is relationship issues. Now, these can definitely cause anxiety, stress, and depression. Now, relationship problems, no matter whether they are with your family, soulmate, or your fellow students, will have a negative effect on all areas of life. It can be study, your mood, the productivity, or even your health. Right? They lead to misunderstanding, frequent break and mental crack-ups, dumps, and sometimes, to somatic ailments and illness. In short, it's a constant source of sadness and suffering. Now, what kind of relationship issues can we look at? We are trying to see family issues where the family tries to control you in certain way as to what you should do, what you should not do, or you try to control them, right? Holding some old grudges is also something that can cause a lot of relationship issues, or spending very little time together can also be one of the reasons, right? On a personal relationship front, jealousy, for your boyfriend or your girlfriend, right? Not having enough attention from each other, having different interests and not really acknowledging them, not having enough communication, or there being communication issue, picking up fights for small things, having feeling of resentment for each other, or being disrespectful. Now, these are also a lot of things that can cause relationship issues, which eventually will cause some kind of stress, anxiety, and depression. The last one that I'm taking up here is peer pressure. And peer pressure can cause stress, anxiety, and depression. Now, peer pressure can be a driving force in influencing your decisions and habits, especially those related to alcohol and drugs. Now, although peer pressure does not necessarily have to be negative, the term pressure, right, itself implies that the process influences people to do things that they may be resistant to or might not otherwise choose to do. Right? So when we say, it's not necessarily negative, when we talk about positive peer pressure, now peer pressure could influence maybe a young person to become involved in sports, right? Somebody pressurizing you to go to sports, and this involvement could be positive for that person, which could lead to exposure to healthy lifestyle, and that person himself or herself can become role model eventually for younger people, right? But peer pressure can definitely be a bad thing, just as it helps to push us to do well. Now, it can damage the emotional health of a person. For example, when you are hanging out with some friends, and they begin to smoke, right? That's not a good thing, but they'll be like, come on, don't worry about it. Nothing's going to happen. I do it all the time. And they're constantly pressurizing you for it. Now you begin to feel like, well, if I don't do it, they will not maybe hang out with me anymore. And that's what is the peer pressure. Apart from the positive and negative peer pressures, let's look at a few relevant ones that are here, right? Which are the spoken peer pressure. Now, this involves a person directly asking, suggesting, persuading, or otherwise directing a person to behave in certain way or take action in a specific manner. So that's spoken peer pressure. Now there is unspoken peer pressure. In a group setting, decisions that are made together can influence the actions of others, even without direct instructions. So if an individual is among a group that chooses to break a curfew, that individual may feel pressurized to follow along to simply fit in. Right? There's also direct peer pressure. Now, direct peer pressure can either be spoken or unspoken, and it can include forcing a person to choose a based on what is directly presented. For example, being handed a beer at a party if it was not requested, right? The indication is that drinking beer is not an option, but rather a requirement. And making on the spot decisions can be a source of extreme pressure and stress for that person, right? So, under these circumstances, many disregard their own views just to fit in or to avoid being rude. Another example can be academic pressure from parents. Expectations of getting an A in every exam or excelling A in every exam. Now, this can cause a lot of stress, right? When you have to keep thinking of getting an A and slogging for it, you know, it is like slogging for somebody else when you don't even have time to socialize with friends because you're busy studying, or when you feel that, oh, I'm going to die if I don't get an A. So that is the kind of direct peer pressures that you can have from your parents. Now, indirect peer pressure is when you can exert a tremendous amount of influence on an impressionable individual. A person's personal view of behavior, thought, or situation may be drastically impacted by popular opinion of a larger, more highly regarded group. Right? For example, a person, a friend who is fit and fine, right, keeps skipping meals and keeps saying that, oh, I'm fat, I'm so fat. Now, this can influence a person who is actually fat to feel the pressure of dieting in order to blend in. Right? Another example can be of friends gossiping about classmates. Now, even if there is no direct pressure or a spoken pressure, there is always an indirect pressure that we feel of joining because everybody else is doing the same. So if you look at it, there are many more such areas which we encounter in our lives, and understanding what they mean to us and what we need to do in case we do not come across them is essential. Right? It is important to understand what is in our control and what we can change, acknowledge and accept that things will not always be in our control, and further tweak our thinking patterns such that we are able to manage our distresses more effectively. Now, learning that we had so far, right? We all have periods of stress, worry, anxiety, sadness, fear, or anger. And it is natural and a very normal thing to be identified as humans. Now, when these disturbances, though, cause us significant distress or impairment, now we are moving towards the spectrum of mental troubles. Now, each one of us should look for signs within ourselves as well as with people around us
Hi everyone. Prerna ma'am has some connection problem at her end. She is joining back in couple of minutes. I think she's joined back.
Yes, I am sorry, everybody. Now, these are the kind of things that definitely cause a lot of stress and anxiety where you get disconnected while you're doing the presentation, right? I think I was almost towards the end of, so let me just quickly, so let me just share my screen quickly. All right, you're able to see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
All right. So we were talking about, the last slide that we were on, unfortunately, when I got disconnected. So we need to understand we all have mental health issues, and it is our responsibility to learn how we can improve, manage, and maintain our well being and lead a more meaningful and satisfying life. Now, an important step is to acknowledge that there is something that is not right, and I am not able to handle it on my own. And the next step is to ask for help, right? Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to present myself. um, I will now hand it over to Shubham, I think, for any
Yes,
question and
yes,
answers people might have.
yes. Thank you, ma'am. Such a wonderful information you have given to us. Mental health is not a destination, but a process. It's about how you drive, not where you're going. Maths has equations. Don't worry about your tensions. Give your suggestions and let's ask the questions. So here comes the question answer time. So anyone can ask the questions. Language is never a barrier. You can ask in any language, or you can put your question in chat.
Yeah, if somebody is not comfortable asking questions, you can put it in the chat box so we can get it addressed.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
यस मैम, मेरा ये क्वेश्चन था कि मतलब कभी कभी हमें रात को सपने आते हैं ना, हम जब सोते हैं तो कभी सपने इतने सच लगते हैं कि हमें पता ही नहीं चलता कि ये सपना है या सच में है। तो हम उसके बारे में बात करते हैं दूसरे लोगों से, तो तो दूसरे लोग क्या कहते हैं कि ये क्या बोल रहा है इसे। मतलब ये जो सपनों का और मेंटल हेल्थ का ऐसा कुछ कनेक्शन है क्या, मतलब और क्या सपने इसे अफेक्ट कर सकते हैं क्या हमारी मेंटल हेल्थ को?
So, when you talk about dreams, right? सपनों की जब बात करते हो, so these are,
यस।
usually you look at, your dreams are based on the events that have happened in your life so far or during the day, right? Now, dreams come basically because your mind is trying to kind of put together all the information that has it has received so far and try to place it in, buckets like memories and, all those, good memories, bad memories. Everything that happens is when your brain is trying to reconcile everything that has happened during the day. So if you look at sapne bhi aise aate hain ki which are very weird, which are not really normal in a sense, because you're connecting two different things in your dreams because your brain is trying to process things. Now there is a lot of research being done on how interpretation of dreams is one of the books that talks about how you can interpret your dreams to find out what it means. But just because you're having weird dreams doesn't mean that something is mentally wrong with you, right? It only means that your brain is trying to process a lot of things at the same time, and what you are, you feel you're seeing is something which is a jumbled version of that. So even if you talk to a person saying that aisa dream aaya tha, they might find it weird because it is weird, but does not necessarily mean that it is affecting your mental health for sure.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Yes, anybody else can ask the questions.
I guess there are no questions, so we can move further.
Yes,
In
okay.
case somebody,
Now,
in case anybody has questions that they don't want to ask over here or talk about in this forum, we will maybe share Prerna ma'am's number with all the participants, so then they can connect with her on one to one and get their questions answered. We can do that. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
We
for
can
now, we can
definitely do
proceed.
that.
Yeah.
yes, now time comes to present a vote of thanks. We just don't want to leave this session, but every good thing has its good end. Now, I request Rotractor Vishnu Hyawade to give a vote of thanks. Over to you, Rotractor Vishnu.
Thank you, Rotractor Shubham Kamble. So, a very good evening to one and all present here. I am Rotractor Vishnu Hivade. Currently, I am a member of Rotrac Club of Electrical MSui Metro. A mentor is someone who allows you to see hope inside yourself. So, it gives me an immense pleasure to deliver vote of thanks for the event to everyone present here. So, I would like to thank Rotarian Prerna Joshi ma'am for such an amazing session. In today's time, mental health is one of the most important aspects, and ma'am covered it really well. Also, I would like to thank Rotaractor Aishwarya Khade ma'am for her precious words, and Rotarian Sneha Subedar ma'am, Rotarian Amita Nene ma'am, and all the Rotarians for supporting us and mentoring throughout the event. Now, I would like to thank our collaborating clubs, that is Rotaract Club of Solapur Dynamic, Rotaract Club of ENTC MCOE, Rotaract Club of Gurugram Midwest, Rotaract Club of Adayala, Rotaract Club of Jamshoro Optimist, Rotaract Club of Computers MCOE Metro, Rotaract Club of Ound, Rotaract Club of Pune Pristine Paradise, Rotaract Club of Rajeshri Shaw College of Engineering, Rotaract Club of Delhi University South Campus. Also, I would like to thank all the presidents and members of all these clubs. And last but not least, I would like to thank our beloved audience for being here. Your kind presence has inspired us all to do better in upcoming episodes. So, guys, let's be together throughout the year and enjoy more such amazing sessions. As Alice Walker says, thank you is the best prayer that anyone could say. I say that one a lot. Thank you expresses extreme gratitude, humility, and understanding. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Protractor Vaibhalakshmi. Thank you.
Thank you, Retractor Vishnu. So, a very good evening to one and all present here. First of all, I would really like to thank a Rotarian Prerna ma'am for clearing all our doubts. Before the session, we actually had some questions, but you covered each and every point, and we all got a clear vision. So, thank you so much for that. Also, I would like to thank Aishwarya for being here. And I would like to thank all the Rotarians for their constant support, and obviously the audience, because you are the one because of whom we could actually make this session a successful one. So, thank you so much, everyone. I would like to request everyone to please turn on your camera so that we can click one picture. Just let us know once you are done. Thank you so much. So, here we officially come to the end of this event. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all.